think it's safe to say that a lot of us really love the iPad mini. I've seen positive tweets about it, videos. I made a positive video about it calling it the last iPad, specifically because it's so true to the original intention of the iPad. It's not trying to be this sort of weird Mac hybrid laptop tablet thing, you know, whatever the iPad Pro is trying to be, and not doing a great job at it, by the way. iPad OS, especially Stage Manager, is still a mess. And unless you're a really niche user, you know, you want like a huge canvas to write on, you need the iPad Pro for Procreate or whatever specific app. It's just like, I don't know, like I just don't know how to use it, but I still want, you know, Apple Pencil functionality. I want to annotate stuff, take notes, sketch a little, and I've really started picking up the iPad mini because it's the perfect in-between, you know, between my iPhone 14 Pro Max and my MacBook Pro, which I do most of my hardcore work on, you know, creatively, and also just, you know, admin tasks, school stuff, whatever. You could replace a MacBook Air in there as well, but I digress. The iPad mini is a fantastic device. However, it is not perfect. It also goes for $499, and at that price point, you know, I think you can have higher expectations for it. I mean, sure, this refresh, the 6th gen in 2021, was majorly different from the 5th gen, which had the old legacy design that we've been seeing since like 2012 and 2013 even. In this video, I want to go over what would make the iPad mini 7th gen the perfect iPad as of, you know, 2023 and 2024. The first thing Apple needs to refine with the next gen iPad mini is battery life, and I would say this is something I'd like to see in all iPad models, specifically the Pro models that are even more power hungry with their brighter, higher refresh rate displays and beefier processors. The iPad mini's 10 hours of battery life seems generous, and I'm sure you can stretch it longer than I can because I have, you know, full brightness on, and I also have, you know, auto lock turned off because I do videos like this. But nonetheless, I'll be like in class taking notes with it and good notes or whatever, you know, doing my thing, doing Safari browsing, nothing crazy. And then I'll check up on it and it's a lot more drained than I'd like it to be, more so than my iPhone, and of course more so than like a MacBook Air. So I'd like there to be more battery life. If Apple needs to make the chassis thicker to put a bigger battery in there, by all means do it. I don't care. I think people are completely fine with that. I mean, look at the MacBook Pros. They're chonky, and nobody cares because they're better and more thermally sound, and they have better battery life than their predecessors. You could also achieve this with a higher or more efficient processor, you know, the A17 maybe, you know, 3nm chips, I don't know. Whatever Apple has to do, I would like to see like 12 hours, 13 hours, maybe 15 hours. I'm sure it's possible. Maybe if they implemented an OLED display, this would help too, because this is just an IPS, LCD, crystal, whatever, you know, panel. Next up though, let's talk about the bezels on this device. I think they can shrink by quite a bit, and I'd love to see that because it would expand the already small display. I mean, sure, I get a lot of work done on here, annotating PDFs, taking notes, especially if you zoom in. You know, it's really not that difficult of a thing to do. I really enjoy using the iPad mini, and for the most part, I don't really miss the extra screen real estate that I would get with an iPad Air or an 11-inch or a 12.9-inch. I might eat my words later if they improve the iPad Pro and make it more useful, but at this point, I'm happy with the form factor. Nonetheless, though, there is screen real estate to be sort of like attained by making the bezels smaller. I don't really need extra borders to grip onto or to place my thumb. I mean, I manage with my iPhone. I would like to see iPhone 14 Pro or 14 level thin bezels on here. That would be amazing. Of course, that would warrant or bring in possibly a dynamic island. The question is, where would that go? Or maybe not even, maybe just a hole punch for a camera. I don't know. Nonetheless, that would be really nice to see because, yeah, we would, you know, attain an extra fraction of an inch of screen real estate, which is a big deal when your screen is already pretty small. And, you know, while we're on the topic of like, you know, using or utilizing screen real estate, I want to quickly mention today's video sponsor, Paperlike. I would not use an iPad without one of these. And also too, an Apple Pencil grip. I have one specifically from or designed by Canupsi. They might still be selling these. Check them out, or just buy their regular ones. It makes the Apple Pencil a lot more easy to grip or hold on to, so I'll link that in the description. But yeah, paper-like screen protectors make the screen feel like paper and make note-taking so much more intuitive and so much more fun and natural. I was always a person that took notes on pen and paper or pencil and paper, so having that feel here is great as well. And with their newer Gen 1, the clarity is even higher. It was already clear before, but now, you know, you really don't lose any display quality when you place this on here. You just get this glorious paper-like texture. So I'll leave a link if you're interested. Also, again, check out their pencil grips, the Canupsi one specifically, if it's still around. Highly recommend that. Beyond bezels though, let's actually talk about display tech in the iPad mini and what I'd like to see. I would like to see the LCD IPS display go away in exchange for a higher or more efficient OLED display that also brings more contrast. If you don't know, OLED displays are in the iPhone, and what's special about them is that each pixel is individually lit. So if it's white, the pixel is white or any other color. If it's black, the pixel turns off. So you're saving power and you're creating a very high amount of contrast. So, you know, videos that you play look better. I think the iPad mini is a perfect entertainment, you know, or YouTube consumption, media consumption device. So, you know, I would expect a better display to be in there as well. It's good right now, but it could be a lot better. And if we have, you know, pretty large OLED displays in the iPhone, I'm sure they could implement one into here. Maybe not as advanced, maybe not as bright, but definitely OLED is possible here. Secondly, I'd like to see more brightness. I think you get 500 nits max here. Of course, you get 1,000 nits max with the iPhone 14 Pro. That's pretty crazy. I mean, ideally, I like to see that on every single device because I'm really a freak about brightness, but I'd like to see an extra, you know, 100, 200 nits here. I think 800 is a perfect number. That's what the iPhone, I believe, 14 gets up to, iPhone 13 possibly. So 800, you know, max, maybe 600, 750, I don't know. That would make a big difference, especially outside too, if you want to use your tablet in a bright or well-lit condition here. It's even like hard to see here because, of course, because I have this, you know, like studio light here. But yeah, a brighter display would definitely be welcome, even though it would draw a little more power. But again, if you have a higher or more efficient processor and a bigger battery, that might not be an issue. And of course, you can lower the brightness at your discretion as well, or keep auto brightness on, which I don't because I'm a psycho. And last up here, I would love to see promotion. I don't honestly know if they would implement it, but it does make a difference. If you care, maybe they wouldn't because they just assume people, you know, in this demographic or segment buying this iPad are not going to care. But I notice it, you know, when scrolling around when using the Apple Pencil, an extra 60 hertz or extra 60 frames per second pretty much every second, you know, when you swipe your iPad or swipe through the UI or use your pencil, etc. Like I said, it does make a noticeable difference to some people though. You know, go to the store, play around with the iPad Air and the iPad Pro. If you notice a difference, then you're one of the people that are cursed like me that notice this. But I would say 60 hertz is just fine. I really haven't had an issue. If I had to choose maybe like bezels opposed to refresh rate, I'd probably choose thinner bezels, to be honest, and maybe even better display tech. I digress. It's kind of a novel thing, but I mean, it would be welcome. However, it would eat up more battery life though, and also draw more power or use up more power CPU and GPU wise, I believe. And speaking of performance, next up, let's talk about a potentially better processor in the next gen iPad mini. I would assume they might throw an A16 in, an A17 in possibly too, because they want it to last, because they don't update it every year. But honestly, I'm less concerned about the actual processor and GPU horsepower. I think it's more than capable enough to drive, you know, a better display, a high resolution display, or more specifically, a higher refresh rate display. Power isn't the issue. I think RAM could be. So I think there's only 4 gigabytes of RAM in here. Where is this? We're gonna see this. Yes, 3.78 gigabytes of usable memory on the processor here. I would like to see like at least 8 gigabytes here to be used, because I mean, like, you can open a bunch of apps and they won't all stay, you know, open. I mean, we can go into like Notability here. It's probably gonna have to refresh. There we go. This is a little marketing campaign I was working on in a class. Weird project, but yeah, like, it would be nice to keep more apps open in the background. Extra RAM is definitely good for that. I think 4 gigabytes or less than that realistically is kind of low. So I don't want an M1 in here. I'm not trying to use Stage Manager. I'm not trying to edit a video on here. I just would like to have more tabs open in Safari, more apps open, etc. So yeah, I think more RAM would just benefit the iPad's user experience, making things again more smooth. leading to fewer app refreshes, reloads. You can have more open in the background and multitask. Even if it's just split screen multitasking, I find that perfectly fine. Stage Manager is goofy. So yeah, more RAM would definitely increase your, or better your user experience. I'll also say this while it's on my mind, it just popped into my head. I didn't actually write this down in the outline. More base storage is absolutely required. 64 gigabytes is a joke. It should be outlawed by the UN. I'm kidding. I don't think they can actually do that, but apparently they can outlaw or, require USB-C to be a standard. But yeah, 64 gigs and cutting it 128 would be perfect, I think, for a device like this where you just want to store some local files, entertainment files, movies, pictures, songs, etc. So yeah, more storage, 128 gigs standard, and also I hope 6 to 8 gigabytes of memory standard as well. The second to last thing I want to discuss is biometrics, and sure, while we have a pretty ingenious implementation of Touch ID here, I would love to see Face ID, especially if the bezels shrink and we get the dynamic island, which I would assume would have a landscape orientation or maybe a portrait one. I would assume landscape though, considering the camera's placement on the iPad 10th gen. Nonetheless though, I find it more convenient on my iPhone, for example, when I unlock. It's really intuitive also for purchasing things. Just looking at it, glancing at it is much more quick than just using or having to use your brain to move your finger to then touch a button. I know it's, it seems like a simple thing, but saving time in this regard is a big, or not a big deal, but it's a big enough deal to where you notice the difference if you sort of use Face ID and Touch ID regularly. It's less of a big deal on a MacBook because your fingers are already sort of on the keyboard, but when you're just holding the device, you gotta adjust and then tap. Again, less convenient, so I'd love to see Face ID here. It's more convenient. It's sort of a pro feature, so we might not see it. It's not like number one on my list, but I would definitely like to see that implementation again to make unlocking more convenient and also make purchases and just biometric unlock more convenient in every case, I would argue, except when it's flat down on the table. Maybe they could have both. I don't know. I would like to see that. I'd like to see Touch ID and Face ID in every Apple device, just to give you the choice, depending on if you're wearing a mask or if you, I don't know, are handing your device to a different person. Maybe you want more than one person to have access, maybe the primary user would have, Face ID unlock. That's a whole separate video. Yeah, I'd like to see Face ID here. And finally, the last thing I want to suggest, I don't think it's gonna happen, is a better camera setup here. I think it's a waste to put a better camera setup on the iPad Pro because nobody wants to hold the giant painting, TV notebook to take a picture. This thing is super small and cute. I mean, sure, it's still an iPad and you don't necessarily want to be an iPad photographer. There's negative stigma with that, but if you're gonna be one, this is the one to use. I was doing this in class. I'll be taking notes and I'll just take a picture. We already have a pretty nice setup on here. We have a 8 megapixel or 12 megapixel, camera with the flash, but what if we had more of an iPhone 14 style implementation with both an ultra wide and a 1x, possibly a higher resolution camera in the future with 1x and 2x capabilities. As we know, the main camera on the 14 Pro is 48 megapixels, and so you can punch in 2 times without losing any quality. So I'd love to see that. Maybe in the future, I don't know if a 48 megapixel camera would be a feature they could bring down to an iPad mini at that price point. Maybe they'd have to up the price, but I would at least like to see an iPhone 14 style setup here with 1x and 0.5x, because ultra wide pictures are pretty useful, especially when you are trying to capture information on a board or just whatever you're taking a picture of on a desk, you want to cram everything in. So I'd like to see more camera capability here, again, simply because it's so simple to just pull out and use, opposed to a bigger, more clunky, more obtrusive iPad Air or iPad Pro, especially a 12.9 inch. And that is about it for this video. It's nice to have sort of another sit down, just sort of whatever, out of my head, stream of consciousness type of vibe here. I haven't done that. I've been trying to script my videos to make them a lot more concise and meaningful, and I intend to do that more, but this is just one of those where I just got to sit down and talk. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've missed these videos, I'll definitely have more coming too. And again, check out my links to the Paperlike products I promoted. I will always, stand by these. I love using a Paperlike screen protector with my iPad. So if you're gonna buy one, definitely get one, especially if you're gonna be taking notes or annotating with the Apple Pencil here. And yeah, the iPad mini is an excellent device. I cannot wait to see the next implementation. The question is, will these new features or alleged features or features we hope to see show up? I would hope at least half of them do. My bet is, you know, a better design might come out of it, better processor, and hopefully a better display, but we've yet to see that. I'm honestly hoping for better battery life, because if this had better battery life, I'd be using it a lot more, because I wouldn't be worried about draining it. You know, I'm a lot more selective with how I use it, so if it lasted longer, I would be pulling it out a lot more. So that is my 2 cents here. I hope you are doing well. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.